Today we're going to do graphing quadratic functions. All right? Quadratic functions is nonlinear. Okay? It's written like this. This is the standard form of it. F of x is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, where a does not equal 0. A cannot be 0. That's what this says right here. Okay? For it to be a quadratic function. It looks like a parabola. Okay? That's the term. It is this shape right there. That's a parabola. To find the axis of symmetry, meaning the line in the middle of it, you do this. You take negative b over 2a. That tells you where the axis of symmetry is. The y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis, is c. The vertex is either a minimum or a maximum. If it's going up, if it looks like this, then the vertex is a minimum because this is the lowest point it goes. If it's upside down, this is a maximum. All right? Any questions? All right, so this is a parabola, and this is just the characteristics of pointing out. This is the axis of symmetry. It's the line that splits it. What that means is it's equal on both sides. Okay? This is the vertex. It's also your minimum on this case, or if it's on top, it's your maximum. And your y-intercept. Where does it cross the y-axis? All right, that's what you use to figure out and draw a quadratic function. All right, so what you need to do is write this down. Find the vertex, the equation of the axis of symmetry, and the y-intercept of each function. So what they'll do is they'll give you a graph with a quadratic function on it and say find the vertex, the equation of the axis of symmetry, and the y-intercept. So what's the vertex? We can tell by just looking at this. What is the vertex here? Negative 1, 0. What's the axis of symmetry? Negative 1. It's the line that splits it. And what's the y-intercept? 1. Easy enough, right? Alright, so we need to find the vertex. Where's the vertex?
2, 3.
It's 2, 3. The maximum here is at 2, 3. What's the axis of symmetry?
How do you get the 2?
It's at 2. And what is the y-intercept?
What? 0.
Where's it across the y-axis at?
0, 0.
Looks more like negative 1 to me. Y equals 2x squared plus 4x minus 3. You're supposed to identify the characteristic from this function. And instead of giving the graph, you're given the function. So the first thing you do to find one of these, the easiest one is to find the axis of symmetry because it has a formula. You guys remember what that formula was? Look on the first page of your notes.
X squared plus bx plus c.
No, it's x equals negative b over 2a.
What? Oh.
So I take 4, it goes on top, and I take 2, it goes on bottom. What is negative 4 divided by 4?
4. 1. Negative 1.
Negative 1. X equals negative 1. So that tells me my axis of symmetry. What else could I use to figure out? What else could I use to figure out? Could I use that to figure out the vertex, or should I use that to find the y-intercept? I can use the axis of symmetry to find the vertex because the vertex includes the x-coordinate, does it not? So what I do is I plug in negative 1 in for the x. So we solve, what's negative 1 times negative 1? It's 1. So we have 2 here. What is 4 times negative 1? Negative 4. And minus 3. What is 2 minus 4 minus 3?
2 minus 4 is negative 2 minus 3, so it'd be negative 5.
It's negative 5. So my vertex is negative 1, negative 5.
Wait, what?
How do you think I find the y-intercept? What have we always done to find the y-intercept?
Oh! See where no, see what crosses the y-axis.
Okay, but we haven't graphed that. You haven't learned how to graph it yet.
Get y by itself. It's C.
It is C.
That doesn't tell what you do.
Okay? But what you do, okay, if you look in the front of the notes, it does tell you, but if you weren't for sure, what are you supposed to do? You guys remember we've talked about finding the y-intercept before. You plug in 0 for x.
Yes!
In doing so, you get what's left. Y equals -3. Okay? So yes, the C is the y-intercept. Okay? But I was helping you to figure out that for yourself. Okay? By plugging in 0 for x, leaves you with C. So that's your y-intercept. Write this down. Y equals -x squared plus 6x plus 4. So what I want to do, my first step is always define the axisymmetry because I'm given the formula. It's -b over 2a. My b is 6. My a is -1. So -6 divided by -2 is +3. So then to find the vertex, I use 3. I replace x with 3. Right? When I do that, what is 3 squared? 9. So I have -9 plus, what's 3 times 6?
18.
Plus 4. So what's -9 plus 18?
9.
9. What's 9 plus 4?
15. No, 13.
13. So my vertex is at 3, 13. So the last thing we find is y-intercept. We can do that by plugging in 0 for each of these, which we know C is always our y-intercept. There's your 3 answers that you have to have. Any questions?
What does like
Alright, so now we're going to figure out if it has a maximum or a minimum. You know it has a minimum if A is a positive number. And we can look back at the examples we've done so far. When A was positive, it was a minimum, meaning it was the vertex was the lowest point. When A is negative, we have a maximum because it's upside down. The negative flips the parabola, which means that the vertex is your maximum. Any questions? So write this down. What they'll do is they'll give you a function like this. F of x is equal to -2x squared minus 4x plus 6. They ask you to determine whether it has a maximum or a minimum. So what we do is we look at A and see if it's positive or negative. Is A positive or is A negative? A is negative. So this has a maximum. If it's negative, it's a maximum. Then you're supposed to figure out what is the maximum or minimum value. So what is our max here? Okay? So what we do is we use our axis of symmetry formula, which is -b over 2a, which gives me -4 over 2 times -2, which would be -1. And for x.
Oh yeah, like we just did.
Once we plugged in -1 in for x, for both x's, then we solve. Which when you work this out, you get. When you solve, you get +8. So that would give you your maximum value of 8.
So, max or
So your max would be 8 right there. Then you're supposed to figure out your domain and range. Okay, domain, I've told you this before, your domain is usually going to be all real numbers. Because the x coordinates are all included. It includes all x coordinates because it goes to the right, it goes to the left, and it doesn't end in either direction. The range is a little different. Okay, your range is all real numbers that are less than or equal to the maximum value. Your max value is 8. The highest it goes is is 8. So your range is y is anything less than or equal to 8. Because it's any number that's less than or equal to 8. It can go up to 8. It's included in 8. Because if you were to draw the parabola here, 8 is the highest it goes. All the way up. But it continues that way. So it's 8 or anything less. That's your range. So we look at this and we determine the first question is, does this have a maximum or a minimum? What would it be? Look at your notes from yesterday. If A is positive, it's a minimum. So then the second part of the question is state what is the maximum or the minimum value, which this would be the minimum value. We do that by first finding the x-coordinate of the vertex, and we do that by using the axis of symmetry formula, which is negative b over 2a. So you have negative 4 over 2 times 2. So your x-coordinate is 1, because 4 divided by 4 is 1. You plug that in for x and figure out what your y-coordinate is. That's your minimum value in this case. 2 times 1 is 2. Minus 4 minus 1 will give you negative 3. So your minimum is negative 3. Then you're supposed to state the domain and range. Your domain is all real numbers. Your range is where y is greater than or equal to negative 3. Because it includes negative 3. It does touch negative 3. That's the lowest point. So it includes it. Any questions? These are the steps to graph a quadratic function. Number 1 is you find the axis of symmetry using negative b over 2a. Once you've found that, you can use that to find the vertex by plugging the x-coordinate in the quadratic function to find y, which tells you if that has a maximum or a minimum. Then the next thing you do is find the y-intercept, which is c, the number by itself. If you're not for sure, plug in 0 for all of the x's. It will tell you where it crosses the y-axis. Because once you've done that, then you use symmetry, okay, to plot the points on the other side of the graph, and then you connect the points. Any questions? So let's graph this one, x squared plus 4x plus 3. All right, step 1 is we find the axis of symmetry using negative b over 2a. So negative 4 over 2, which gives me negative 2. So there's our axis of symmetry right there. That dashed line right there. Then we find the vertex. So we plug in negative 2 in for x. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Plus 3 is negative 1. So my vertex is negative 2, negative 1. Then I've got to decide, is this a maximum or a minimum? Well, what is it?
Minimum.
It's a minimum because A is positive. Okay? So it's going to be going upwards. Step 3 says find the y-intercept. What is the y-intercept? It's C, which is 3. If you're not for sure, plug in 0 here and 0 here. What you do is then you use symmetry. And what they mean is if there's a point on this side of the axis of symmetry, then there needs to be the point on the other side. So it needs to go right there at negative 4, 3. Right? That's what using symmetry means. And then 5s connect the points with a smooth curve. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to look something like this. Any questions? Alright, so let's graph negative 2x squared plus 2x minus 1. Our step 1 is to find the axis of symmetry using negative b over 2a. So negative 2 over 2 times negative 2, which gives you that, which gives you 1/2. So your axis of symmetry is at the half mark, in between 1 and 2. Then the next step is to find the vertex. So we plug in half here. What's a half squared? Does anyone know?
Two.
It's
1.
it's 1/4. Good. What's a fourth of negative 2? Negative half. And then what's a half of 2?
1.
So your vertex is at 1/2, negative 1/2. So we're going to be right in the middle.
This one's a maximum, isn't it?
This is a maximum. Okay, the vertex is a maximum because A is negative. So then what's our y-intercept?
1.
Negative 1.
Same thing.
No, it's not. So we use axis of symmetry to go to the other side, and then we draw a smooth curve that looks like that. Any questions?
My curves don't look so smooth.
Here's your homework assignment.